Shit, we ain't had a hit since you been around. Stop talking.
What was supposed to be a simple business decision turned into one of the wildest behind-the-scenes sagas hip-hop has witnessed in years. Listen to this. This wasn't just paperwork and handshakes. It evolved into a calculated power move where serious money started disappearing in plain sight. What was labeled as a partnership between Wack100 and Blueface didn't exactly scream security or mentorship. Hold up, it felt more like a drawn-out chess match where the rules shifted mid-game and the money flowed without anybody clearly steering the ship. Fans were expecting structure and leadership, but what played out had the entire culture side-eyeing the situation. So let's unpack how one of hip-hop's loudest managers allegedly maneuvered everything right in front of us. Wack100, born Cash Jones, is a veteran Los Angeles manager known for bold takes, non-stop drama, and staying attached to artists living in straight chaos. His name echoes every time controversy hits the timeline. Before he ever stepped into boardrooms, Wack built his reputation in the streets, then transitioned that influence into the music business. He's managed major figures like The Game and Ray J. But out of all the situations tied to his name, the Blueface deal might be both the most lucrative and the most questionable. Blueface, born Jonathan Porter, was a young LA rapper who blew up almost by pure chance. His breakout track Thotiana exploded online, but fame arrived before he fully grasped contracts, management politics, or the industry machine. He wasn't media trained, business savvy, or properly shielded. He was simply a street-aware artist catching momentum and figuring it out on the fly. And that lack of foundation made him vulnerable to someone seasoned in the game like Wack100.
Dude, I'll tell you why. Blueface is signed to Wack100 and managed by Wack100. Let me tell you how this works. When you sign to a label, they take at least half already. Then you're getting managed by the guy who owns the label. So of your 50% that you're getting, or less than 50%, he's still taking at least 20% of that too.
No lawyer in sight, no structured management in place, and money flying around with zero roadmap. Listen to this. According to Blueface himself, that's when Wack allegedly came in strong. Meetings were pushed aggressively, influence was applied heavy, and the vibe felt more like control than guidance. The link-up supposedly started after Wack's daughter heard Thotiana and put her dad onto the track. Soon after that, Wack slid into Blueface's DMs trying to set up a sit-down. Blueface wasn't sold on the idea at first. A quick Google search pulled up nothing but beef, chaos, and headline drama, which had him guarded from the jump. He even admitted Wack's reputation made the situation tense, especially with their different street affiliations. Still, Wack stayed persistent. Back-to-back calls, endless texts, and pressure to pull up to his house like the clock was ticking. At that time, Blueface was moving completely independent, booking his own shows, filming his own videos, handling business himself, and figuring it out in real time. While major labels like Atlantic Records and Empire was circling, they didn't truly grasp his background or how fast his world was shifting. Then, everything shifted in one moment, right in his own neighborhood. Wack called again, sent a car, and this time Blueface stepped inside. When Blueface finally arrived at Wack100's mansion, the flex landed immediately. The property, the lifestyle, the entire atmosphere screamed power. Blueface later said when you see somebody who really got it like that, it hits different. And that image alone convinced him Wack might be the one to elevate him. Girl, that was the exact play Wack had lined up. The mansion wasn't just a residence, it was a calculated sales presentation. Every detail in that moment felt crafted to impress, overwhelm, and soften Blueface up before any serious business conversation even began. That's where the story pivots hard. Wack allegedly already had paperwork printed out and sitting there before Blueface even stepped through the door. No extended breakdown, no thorough explanation, just documents waiting for a signature. And that alone had people side-eyeing the situation. Major industry contracts aren't supposed to feel like pop quizzes you didn't study for. Then came the most uneasy exchange of the night. Blueface turned to Wack's wife and asked her point blank if she'd advise her own son to sign that same deal. She answered yes, and that response reportedly hit Blueface in a way he didn't expect. He believed a mother wouldn't steer someone toward a bad decision, and off that belief alone, his defenses dropped all the way down. Blueface signed right then and there. No attorney present, no review period, no real clarity on what those documents actually committed him to. He trusted the setting, trusted the timing, and trusted people who had far more industry mileage than he ever did. Later on, the fine print started surfacing. The agreement wasn't just about management. It bundled a management contract with a record deal, meaning Wack allegedly collected money from both sides of the same revenue. First came 50% off the top from music income, then an additional 20% management fee from what remained. By any music business standard, that's an enormous slice. DJ academics even broke it down publicly and labeled it what many were already thinking: double dipping. In most cases, artists avoid signing both agreements with the same individual because it creates an obvious conflict of interest. Typically, managers earn around 15 to 20%, and record deals split profits more evenly after costs are recouped. But this arrangement positioned Wack with leverage from every direction, while Blueface absorbed the long-term consequences. And hold up, this wasn't a quick, temporary agreement. These contracts span years and multiple releases, meaning that percentage keeps generating income over time. Fast forward to today, and the outcome tells its own story. Blueface walked out of jail reportedly with very little financial security to show for it. Even with platinum plaques and massive exposure, his restaurant business hasn't taken off the way many assumed it would. That truth hits different when you realize he's reportedly keeping only about 30% of what he generates. When your revenue gets cut that aggressively, building real wealth becomes an uphill battle. Growth slows down, ventures lose momentum, and long-term strategies start collapsing fast. Reports claim a large portion of Blueface's earnings has been going directly to Wack100. Now there's even chatter that he could be forced to give up his home. And that right there shows how destructive a lopsided contract can be for an artist's future. While Wack appears online showcasing luxury, success, and a high-end lifestyle, the artist behind the hits seems to be fighting to maintain stability. What makes it even wilder is that Blueface is reportedly still bound to the deal. These types of contracts are structured to hold artists in place, making it nearly impossible to walk away unless they're prepared to spend serious money battling it out legally and paying penalties. And let's not ignore how young Blueface was when this all went down. He was barely in his early 20s, straight out of the streets without formal business knowledge or solid protection around him. That gap in experience created the perfect environment for a seasoned industry figure to design terms that heavily favored themselves. Looking back, the red flags were obvious. Contracts prepared before meaningful discussions, layered deals, no opportunity for legal review, and one of the most strategic tactics, leveraging family presence to make everything feel secure and trustworthy. That's not mentorship, that's pressure packaged as comfort. Wack100 might say he played a role in elevating Blueface's career, but taking nearly 70% of someone's earnings pushes past any reasonable boundary. When one individual controls the finances, the decisions, and the overall direction, that's not collaboration, that's dominance. And when dominance runs that deep, the artists end up carrying the cost. That's millions of dollars over the years that were supposed to stay with the artist. If there's one takeaway that hits harder than anything in this story, it's this: never put your signature on anything without a lawyer breaking it down first. It doesn't matter how wealthy somebody appears, how polished their pitch is, or how tempting the opportunity sounds. Independent legal counsel is not optional. A lot of industry veterans package themselves as mentors or big brother figures, but real mentorship doesn't come attached to an overwhelming percentage. The mansion, the cars, the lifestyle, the whole presentation created a fantasy that convinced Blueface success was just one signature away. What he couldn't see back then was how that fortune was actually structured. Wack100's wealth wasn't built off a single breakout win. It reportedly came from collecting significant percentages across multiple artists over time. and the impact of deals structured like this stretches far beyond finances. When artists don't retain what they earn, they can't invest in their families, their communities, or anything built to last. That's how cycles repeat with no clear exit. Any competent entertainment attorney would have flagged the issues immediately. Blending management with a record deal, excessive percentages, no cooling off window, those terms would have been renegotiated or rejected outright. With even basic industry awareness, Blueface likely would have recognized that double dipping at that scale isn't standard and definitely isn't equitable. Instead, urgency became part of the strategy. Pressure to sign quickly leaves no space to think, research, or challenge the fine print. Meanwhile, he already had attention from major players like Atlantic Records and Empire Records. Those were legitimate pathways that could have positioned him far more securely. Now he's facing the consequences: fewer options, financial strain, and major assets potentially at risk. The uncomfortable reality is this: his breakout success generated wealth for someone else, but the structure of that agreement limited his ability to build the same long-term security for himself. At this stage, the only apparent path is to keep working within those same conditions and hope volume somehow offsets that slim 30%. That's an incredibly tough spot to be in. No matter how much effort you put in, the numbers are already tilted. And that weight doesn't just affect your finances, it affects your mindset too. Waking up every morning knowing most of what you grind for ends up in someone else's hands hits motivation hard and fast. Creativity stalls, passion starts slipping away. Instead of chasing growth, honing craft, and building a long-term plan, the artist gets stuck in survival mode. Every track, every feature, every move feels hollow when the payout barely touches your pocket. Over time, that kind of structure eats away at ambition, turning what should be thrilling into straight-up frustration. Other artists are watching these moves closely. Scenarios like this quietly become case studies in the industry, teaching lessons without a single word spoken. It shows exactly why solid representation, legal knowledge, and patience are non-negotiable. What's unfolding between Blueface and Wack100 no longer even looks like a proper manager-artist relationship. It feels more like control than collaboration. True managers are supposed to work for their artists. They protect money, build leverage, and open doors. They don't engineer deals where they win no matter what. This arrangement is basically an extreme 360, and even standard 360s rarely approach 70%. By any measure, that's way over the line. If deals like this start being treated as normal, it sends a dangerous signal. It implies desperation justifies predatory terms. And these setups don't stay locked in contracts. They erode trust, strain personal ties, and leave resentment that lingers for years. In the beginning, Blueface likely viewed Wack as a mentor, someone who had the know-how to guide and protect him. Realizing that trust came with massive strings attached is a brutal reality check. When artists can't grow true wealth from their own hustle, their families feel it too. Loved ones, relatives, everyone in the circle misses opportunities. Layer in financial pressure, legal stress, and the feeling of being trapped, and the mental toll becomes impossible to ignore. Success is supposed to bring stability and peace, not constant stress and worry. When the majority of your earnings vanish somewhere else, it's hard to stay motivated day in and day out. That's a reality the music world can no longer ignore. Situations like this highlight exactly why artists need real protection before it's too late. So many disastrous outcomes could be avoided with just the basics. Understanding contract language, knowing industry norms, learning how percentages work, and thinking about long-term consequences before signing. Those steps alone can save careers. Peer guidance is just as crucial. Artists who've already weathered the industry storms are often the only ones willing to flag quiet traps, shady setups, and deals that look sweet initially but turn toxic over time. At the end of the day, Blueface is the one who bore the brunt. A young artist who struck gold with a viral hit should have been positioned for lasting security. Instead, that breakout moment ended up building someone else's fortune. And that's the core problem here. This isn't a single misstep. It's a system built to reward the wrong players. It stretches far beyond one manager or one contract. The industry has a long history of seasoned business figures exploiting young, inexperienced talent who haven't yet learned how power, leverage, and money really flow. Until transparency, education, and accountability become standard, stories like this will keep repeating, just with new faces. The biggest lesson is simple but crucial. Knowledge is power. Trust is fine, but verification is mandatory. A deal that seems life-changing today can quietly drain millions over time if you don't slow down and read the fine print. If Blueface's experience helps even one young artist pause, ask questions, and protect their future, then something meaningful comes out of this whole situation, and that alone makes this story worth telling.